Long ago, when the world was young, there was a girl who wandered the fields and woods of a wild and beautiful land. She loved the plants and the birds and the rivers. One strange day, fear crept into her body. She could no longer hear the voices of the trees and rocks who had been her friends. The heat of fear and longing burned her. She sang and she sang, calling out to paradise as time and again her heart broke. Until one day she found the women who danced, women who loved the plants, women who sang the magic songs, women whose stories nourished the cycles of life, women who know we must tend our own souls and the soul of this world with old stories made new. In the beginning was a blessed silence, a world of dreams sent from a future as yet unborn. The silence imagined sound and gave birth to song. A call to being which gave shape and form to all things. The song infused all it created with the essence of its beauty, and that divine essence became an elemental dance. From this dance of earth, air, fire, and water came a fusion of forces sung together by longing, a declaration of love, soul seeking form, form seeking soul. And this love song gave birth to paradise.
I've been a-wandering all the night and the best part of the day.
We are made of this beauty and of the pain that comes of forgetting that we were once at home in a marvelous land whose presence still hovers all around us.
I will bring you a branch of May.
We are haunted by the love song as the breath of spirit blows through the high branches of the trees, and we remember the truth that we are still a part of this enchanted, wild-hearted world, which is always calling us home.
I stopped being a Mormon when I was 11. It had never really sat right with me. I mean, I find drawings I did when I was little, and they were like of like bad bunnies. They were bunnies with tattoos, and like I remember getting in so much trouble for drawing these pictures of bad bunnies. And I would draw like evil ponies, or I mean, just these. Clearly, I was never sold on the whole thing. I was always trying to like rebel out.
When I was in the first grade, my older brother had a set of Laura Ingalls books, and so I went in and I chose On the Banks of Plum Creek, and I think it took me like 6 months to get through. I could not read it really fast, and it was a lifelong love from that point forward of this traditional life.
I feel like the TV raised me. I feel like that was my culture, was the television, and I always knew something was missing. You know, like I was just like, this is so hollow.
I grew up Catholic, and I went to Catholic school, so I was definitely raised on heavy dogma of sinner, sinner, bad, bad. And I can remember being in elementary school, and well, first of all, the nuns didn't like me because I was left-handed, and that's like serious mark of the devil.
I wasn't happy in the city, and I knew I just needed to go, and I actually went to a Grateful Dead show. I was only going to 2, and then I never came back. I actually remember calling my mom and being like, where are you? And I was like, I'm just leaving. I'm going on tour. And so, you know, that's what I'm doing. And then I just traveled. I went to California with $20 in my pocket and a bag of fabric.
It was just sort of this natural progression of just wanting the healthiest things for our children. We just said, we don't want to raise our children far from the land. We want them to eat good food. We don't want a lot of chemicals in their body. And we didn't have a lot of money, so we thought, well, we're going to have to provide all that for ourselves. So some of it was out of necessity.
I found the subculture. I found the Rainbow Tribe. I'm like, I'm a gypsy. When I saw these people acting like gypsies and living that life of togetherness, of what it means to be a tribe, you know, people brushing each other's hair and expressing themselves through their clothing and singing and dancing and celebrating. And that's when I was like, that's who I want to hang out with. That's what I'm looking for, and I'm not going to stop until I find it.
The thing that really told me that I had to look at it a different way was going to the Vatican. One thing that I remember that really blew my mind was going in and looking at the painting by Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel, which is called the Judgment Day. I think that's what it was. Yes. And so here are all the people going up to heaven, and they're just looking fantastic and happy. And then all the people going to hell were melting. And I just couldn't buy I am not melting. So that's the day I stopped believing in hell also.
Finding the fact that God wasn't always like a white man with a beard that rode down on a cloud was pretty empowering. And to realize that like women had power, and it wasn't a power that excluded the masculine. It was just acknowledging the goddess and like the curves of the hills and the rivers flowing. It's like, I see my body in every manifestation of that.
This is how we live. This is as good as it gets, this is as good as we need it to be. My husband blacksmiths, and I'm into fiber. I spin wool and I knit. We are happy with what we do and how we live and how all the little piles in our house look, because everything has a function in this big, loud family.
I am me in beauty, free to be seen. Even as a little girl, like, I just knew that nature was where I was from and where I was going. I used to play in the woods and with the fairies and with the rocks and the violets. And that was just where my heart was, and that's what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to be a little Native American girl. But my journey home was just always going back. It was always going to the land, always going to nature, always being as wild and natural as I could be.
The one thing I really liked about going to church was the ritual. Like, I liked that they lit the candles. I liked when it was like the special days and they brought out the incense and the big candles got lit. I really wanted to have a spirit practice, and I just started lighting a candle every day. So I have little altars everywhere. Part of my spirit practice was working in the garden. I mean, that's the major altar.
And when I rise, let me rise like a bird, joyfully, joyfully. And when I fall, let me fall like a leaf, gracefully, gracefully. I've always loved working in the spirit world. I was just born to navigate that world. It's very familiar. Very early on, when I was 6, I knew somehow or another I was going to be a healer. So I became a physician assistant, absolutely loved it. 2 years of really, really intensive training, and thought, well, I'll go and I'll be a PA and I'll work for 5-6 years, get a lot of clinical experience. I love the clinic, I love ER, just all that kind of stuff. And then I'll morph into weaving the plants in. And the dream had another story for me, because deep in my soul, what I really know is that we are being dreamed as much as we are dreaming. What I had to do after the PA training was apprentice to the plants. So the rich apothecary of these mountains, from the cohosh and golden seal and ginger and on, all these medicines are here. So I really feel that it was this ecosystem that called me down to study and apprentice to the plants. And then I began the journey. I really found the plants to have a great spirit language themselves. I found being in the woods incredibly mystical, magical. You come upon a plant and you just gasp. You just can't help but have your breath taken away. And the texture and the taste, and it's such an incredibly sensual experience. I love being an herbalist. I love being that village practitioner that's very, very simple. And there's a patterning. And so just as nature, the spiral is a pattern, the circle is a pattern, and they have effects in our environment, our bodies are patterns of energy as well. So you can see anxiety has this quivering pattern, and depression, the aura is sort of enveloping, it's coming back down on them. So St. John's wort is used for depression, but it's this incredibly beautiful yellow flower that sits in the solar plexus, and that's the sense of self, that's who we are. Taking that plant form of sunlight, you know, really, that's what the plants do. They inhabit their environment. They inhabit their ecosystem. And they either bring us damp, or they bring us heat, or they bring us lunar energy. I'm going to go to my grave in absolute awe of these plants. As we yearn to live simpler, deeper values, dominant culture prospers by separating us from our essential selves. We strive, we spend, we struggle.
Spirit, lend me your voice Teach me what I can say. Show me how I can live to walk the medicine way.
Greed and fear seem to rule the world, robbing us of our trust in our own primal ability to know our own bodies and what we need.
So that's what I really think of as the medicine way, is what are you doing that's so much bigger than what tincture you're going to take or what tea you're going to drink. It's sometimes as simple as what plant are you going to breathe by? You know, what music do you need to listen to that morning? Do you need to stay home? Do you need to go out? It's trying to really listen to what feels right.
If you think about the way that humans have cared for each other since the beginning of time, we have had a sustainable lifestyle. We haven't looked far from our environments to find what it was that we needed.
My greatest sense is that the world as we have known it is already gone.
Not long ago, the grandparents were the ones that were teaching, that knew, the intuition, that knew the, we say common sense, but it's that understanding, watching nature.
We currently live in a culture that often doesn't support us knowing. The medical paradigm in this country, as we know, is very, very powerful. And traditionally, families have cared for their own.
And so the wise woman tradition is bringing this back in a very powerful way, because our health care has been confiscated by a male scientific model that is saying, no, don't worry about that. Don't think about that. We will know by our tests, by our studies, and really taking that whole information gathering out of men, women, as well as children.
And a huge part of what midwives do is teach women how to trust themselves. In hospice, we do that by decreasing a sense of hierarchy. Same with midwifery. In midwifery, the woman is the expert about her own body and her birth. In obstetrics, the physician is the specialist. He's the one that knows most about that woman and her body. In hospice, we again give that power back to that family and that patient, because they're the ones who know this person the best.
There is no doctor, no nurse, not me, it's going to be able to tell your body exactly what it needs, but your innate can. But we had a long talk about that, didn't we?
I think it's really important that we speak very truthfully about the control of our psyches in keeping us slaves to our work, to consumption, to material world.
Children are overstimulated and oversedated from the time they're born. I mean, I saw these little socks that you can put on newborns, and when they wiggle their feet, they light up. And I thought, now why are we overstimulating newborns? I mean, their feet are fascinating enough when you watch them discover them. So why do we have to add flashing lights?
We are bombarded at the checkout when we scan our food. We're bombarded when we go through metal detectors, at the airports, when we use our cell phones, when we go through a Wi-Fi area. We are being bombarded all the time with vibrations that our bodies haven't a clue what to do with.
above everything else, trust yourself. That sense of self-knowing has really been denigrated for a variety of reasons, and primarily because that was taken from our parents.
The innate is that internal intelligence that we have that's connected to all things. When we can accept our physicalness in total weaving with the mind, total body-mind connection, when we recognize that, we'll be in a lot healthier position. There's not the separation.
We knew from, I think, conception of my first child that neither of us ever wanted to put our kids in school. And we just never even talked about it. We were just like, yeah, kids aren't going to school. So we've just been learning as we go. So it's always changing. We're pretty loose, but we do workbooks, and we do some conventional academics, but it's nice because we get to pick and choose. And we also get to pick and choose how each child is taught. They're all so different. When my daughter, in all of her 11-year-old glory, is writing under the grandmother tree, I'm like, they got it.
I think it would be really fun to have other people read my work and be inspired by that.
In the springtime garden, rosy morning glow, sunshine calling, falling, calling, seedlings wake and grow.
When I had my oldest daughter,
Good boy, good boy.
I knew I wanted to raise her with being really empowered, knowing the goddess, knowing that she is the goddess.
It's okay.
It's like remembering your cells to resonate in that original way, because we're constantly replicating, we're constantly renewing, giving yourself the right message. It's kind of like, if you want to enact change, then tell yourself what you want to be changed into and keep repeating it, and eventually your cells are going to resonate with that message. It's like, why not? Tell your daughters they're beautiful. Tell them that they're strong, and they're going to like cellularly resonate. Strength and beauty and just power.
Whoa.
Do you want an apple?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoop, perfect. Go get that apple. Shake them apples down. Good boy. All right, let's go find some elderberries.
Shake those Simmons down.
Shake them Simmons down. We are hunter-gatherers. That's our dream, and that's what we do. I mean, this is amazing. This is going to be enough berries, probably for a year's worth of medicine for my family. So most of our days include collecting or harvesting something. Like my son the other day, he spent the whole day walking the river. He just walked the river the whole day, and it was like dark, and we had a little fire in the yard because we were cooking dinner outside, and he came home with like 10 pounds of fish that he had carried home. No, they're not ready yet, honey. We're not farmers. We're more collecting from the wild. You just feel connected. You feel the spirit. And that's why I love watching my kids pick something and eating it and knowing their relations, the circle of life and being part of that circle, not separate from that circle. All right.
I arise today through the strength of heaven, light of sun, radiance of moon, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, swiftness of wind, depth of the sea, stability of earth, firmness of rock.
I am a Christian pantheist and proud of it. We all know that Christianity traditionally has been a patriarchal religion. I think pantheism is a wonderful counterpoint to that and rebalances the world, because pantheism is so full of birthing, the earth, the mother, and there is no conflict between creation and the beauty of the pagan world, which says there is a bit of God in everything. Why should those be in conflict? I'm a small artist. He is the great artist. But I know when I create something, when I write a poem or a song, that I put something of myself into the creation that stays there even after it is finished. And so I can't imagine that God, being the greatest of all artists, does not leave some of himself in everything that he made. And that's what the pantheists believe, and the pagans, that everything is filled with spirit.
We were just like running like girls, and she's like, come on, let's go get a drink. And she just bent down on this mossy rock and just bent down and just started drinking from the stream. And I was just like, oh, and I did it, and the feeling that I got was just like, it was like breastfeeding. And I wasn't breastfed, so I can only imagine what it must be like to just take total nourishment from the mother. Like your mouth, like not using a cup, not using your hands, using your mouth in the water. It was divine. I just find the spirit in nature. Like everywhere I look in nature, it's so perfect and so beautiful. Like whatever the creator of it all is got to be magical, because who could have thought it up so perfectly?
Well, I guess it's my own personal myth in a way. Or creation story. And I think that all the things in nature decided to simply be. The butterfly decides to be free and fly and suck nectar. But I also believe that there's like a lot of other energies, divas and spirits, and me connecting with the energies of all those, and the plants and the rocks and the dirt and the bugs, and we're all like this big, just a big pulsating ball of love, because they love what they're doing. They don't know how to not love what they're doing. They just are.
The ancient Druidic calendar was based on a sacred tree for each of 13 moons. As they held the codes for the mysteries of time, the plants also held a code for healing. Women have been the keepers of healing ways in traditional cultures, always. Old wise woman at the edge of the village was essential to its health. She was plant woman and midwife to birth and death. Until jealousy became hatred and fear named her witch, and she was burned. But her secrets, her wisdom, survived with the plants. This tradition has been held by a procession of women through time, listening with their hearts to the plants.
I don't practice alternative medicine. It's traditional medicine. And alternative really is sort of a denigration of thousands and thousands of years of wisdom and knowledge. And when people say, well, why don't you give a history of herbal medicine? You know, they expect me to start with the Persians or the Egyptians or Unani Tib. And really, the beginning of herbal medicine is beginning with the plants.
The plants called me to my profession. And the first memory I have is when I would sit on the riverbank and I would look at the purple dead nettle and the little ground ivies and the little flowering weeds that grew there. I just knew they were there for something. So it's been a blessing to be here and to work with the plants and to listen to what Spirit has to say.
Who I really am is a medical intuitive. The whole idea of working as an intuitive is reading the landscape of their body and navigating the terrain of their energy spheres.
The face of the village healer has changed with the passing of time. She must now confront challenges never imagined in a time when the world was younger and life was simpler.
Addictions are a soul illness. There is something deeply wounded in the soul. There's an African plant called ibogaine, and this is a fabulous plant in the sense that there was a fellow in New York City who was a heroin addict, and he was really clearly on the descent, and somehow or another somebody gave him a cup of ibogaine tea, and 1 cup of ibogaine tea healed his soul. And ibogaine in Africa is called the root of the ancestors. But here are these plants, clearly here, with a very, very potent and powerful purpose. That is threatening to a capitalist society, a socialist society. There's a tremendous industry in addictions. You know, we make a lot of money from leading people in that way.
My way of getting the medicine from the plants is just being with them. I mean, just seeing them, just being with them, just getting my hands dirty, just weeding them, tending them, watching them grow. That is my plant medicine. Nature is a study in simplicity and beauty. Simplicity in dirt, rain, grow. You know, peace, love, happiness.
I feel like I've fallen into work that I didn't know was supposed to be my work, and I have been working with children with autism. I had this revelation where I was like, you know, Matthew Wood, who's an incredible herbal elder, talks about wood betony as being an abduction remedy in cases of alien abductions. And I started thinking, wow, autism is presenting almost like a kind of abduction. And so I started using wood betony in the formulas for many of these children, and it's working. It really starts to bring the energy in. It starts connecting the solar plexus, that sense of self, the I am, and it just starts bringing integration.
So the magic, the etheric energies, the folklore that's behind each of these plants is so intriguing to me. And when I get a clear vision, and I really think it's through divine channels, I listen, and whether it's the actual plant talking to me, the fairies, grandmother whispering in my ear, I just know that that's why I've been put into this place in my life. That's the beauty of this world, that there are so many things that are in the ethers that I feel are part of the magic go into the brewing pot for sure. They're right there with Grandma, you know, mixing in the love.
I really encourage students and other people, sit with that plant. You sit with that plant, you draw that plant, you dream with that plant. You find out, what does that plant have for you? How are you going to use that? And that is the essence of traditional herbal medicine.
Sacred places are those places where you go to get deep into yourself and also beyond yourself at the same time. Well, I have several sacred spaces, and mine are tied to the seasons. In the spring, I like to go on an old back road that follows an ancient creek bank and see all the burning and the bearing. It goes through a pasture for several miles, and there are always baby goats and young calves and the borning of lambs, and then you will see the nesting of the wood ducks.
We culturally are very separated from birth and death. Most women go into their own birthing time never having seen a real birth.
I had my first child in a hospital. She's 11 now. And I was on board with all these things like nursing and wearing your baby and co-sleeping. And for some reason, home birth just sort of escaped me. It was something I was a little ignorant of, and I didn't even put a lot of thought into. My in-laws helped me find a hospital and a doctor, and I went, okay. And I just, you know, I was young, and I just did what I thought you were supposed to do. And I wrote a birth plan, and I thought that that's what you did, and that they would listen and respect that. And so then they didn't.
This road eventually leads to a very old, small country church. I go and I get out and sit on the steps and feel the prayers of all of those generations just clustering around me.
And I had my beautiful daughter, and you know, from the moment we wheeled out of the hospital, because you have to be wheeled out, my husband and I went, we're never doing that again. And, you know, that's a pretty harsh thing to say, but, you know, everyone's got to kind of know their truth.
Also, when you think about the history of birth through time, women have learned about birth through listening to other women's stories and then by telling their stories.
Each of our sons have been born at home, just my husband and myself, and always a good buddy. I have two women in my life who have been at various of those births, who are just there to hold space and get me a drink if I need it. But they've been pretty quiet, always on the couch, and pretty predictable. And it's been amazing. It's amazing to curl up in your bed, you know, in your home, in your smells, and, you know, and the things that are comforting to you, and curl up with your baby and pass out, you know, after birth.
The first story that comes to mind was a birth that I attended with a highly educated woman and her husband. They had prepared a lot for their first birth. They had a family member who was their obstetrician. And when it came to her birthing time, she wasn't allowed to eat or drink. And as a result, became very dehydrated. It set up this negative feedback system where she was vomiting a lot and was really exhausted, pushed for hours, and ended up with a cesarean. And it took her years to heal from that experience. She felt very disempowered.
Mama.
Mother, wear the cloak of the mysteries, Mother. Be the light and the dark. Open up to the ancient energy the goddess is spiraling through.
The asked me to be their midwife, and I did a lot of positive reinforcement and visualization with her during her pregnancy. And then during the birth, she had a really long, hard second labor. When it came to pushing, she got really, really scared and was saying, I can't do this, I can't do it. And I just kept very gently saying, you are doing it. And finally, when the baby's head was crowning, I put her hands on the baby's head, and she actually birthed her baby into her own hands. And she lifted her baby up, and she looked at him, and she turned to me and said, all I needed was for you to tell me I could.
I want to bear fruit still in my old age. Please don't give me a child. But I want to bear fruit in prayer. I have a summer sacred place, which is on the top of a mountain on the Skyline Drive. And there's a little stone bench, and behind it, a very courageous, dwarfed, warped apple tree of considerable age and defiance, who has met the winds and the ice and the snow head on without any protection or any blinkers or blinders. And there it is, surviving. And usually the time I like to go there best is right after the sun has gone down, but you still see the gilding of the sun on all of the backs of the mountains, and below the dangling shadows in the crevices. My blue mountains, with 100 backs that bend like the weary backs of men, who will ever search the ground for what cannot be found, and will never raise their eyes again.
It is full summer now, the heart of June. Not yet the sunburnt reapers are astir upon the upland meadow, where too soon rich autumn time, the season's usurer, will lend his hoarded gold to all the trees, and see his treasure scattered by the wild and spendthrift breeze.
My sacred place of the fall is at a river, and it runs through the middle of a beautiful forest. And I watch the glorious colors of the leaves falling into the water and being washed away by the talking water like the moments of my life.
I tend to want things to be aesthetically pleasing. I am a Pisces, and Pisces like pretty things. And we like to have our nice stones, our altars perhaps, a collection of memorabilia, really, that reflect our life and our path and spirituality. So I think it's within that idea that I came to the food aspect of my desire for sweetness and my need to, or my desire again, to share the sweetness in life. I find that plants bring me a lot of pleasure, and they can bring others a lot of pleasure. It doesn't have to taste bad to work. When I saw the word cordial, that also intrigued me, because I lived in Europe for quite some time, and you would have a cordial when you were welcomed into someone's home. The cor, C-O-R, the word itself means heart in Latin, and from the Latin root cor. And that was touching to me, that you can share something from your heart with those that enter your home or enter your space.
It's a place of dreaming about the harvests and and trying to merge with all the harvest. It's a place of great serenity. I consider myself now a gleaner who is coming after the harvest and picking up and gathering the rest of the grain.
Well, I do like cordials that make you feel happy. So I have several that are uplifting and euphoric, I would even say. And I have Damiana Delight. And Damiana is an herb that we have discovered from South America that is much more floral tasting than some, and I had a bit of a dilemma as to how to make it taste good. A regular tincture did not taste good, but it should be a very tasty plant. So I learned to tincture it in amaretto, which already tastes good to me. And when I strained it out, that was it. Sweetened with maple syrup. It was truly delightful. And the beauty of Damiana is it also has an aphrodisiac quality. A lot of people enjoy that. It relaxes the nervous system. It tones the organs, the female reproductive system and the male reproductive system. So I say it just diminishes the resistance. It just allows you to get out of your head and come heart to heart with your beloved, and therefore euphoria may indeed flourish.
My sacred places for winter are all here around my house. They're all named after Celtic saints. But my favorite of all is St. Aidan's Oak. Now, St. Aidan was a wonderful Celtic saint, probably my favorite of all. He was a saint of great compassion, and one day he heard a pack of hounds chasing a deer, and his heart was filled with such compassion for the deer that he turned himself into a stag to lure the dogs away. And here you see that there's no conflict at all between the Christian ideal of the saint, the compassionate saint, and the pagan idea of metamorphosis into an animal.
Ultimately, we fear the unknown, and death is the ultimate unknown. It's hard work. It's really hard work, and nobody tells us how much work it is to give birth or how much work it is to die.
So what these plants are doing is they have certain constituents, for example, ayahuasca or psilocybin. They have something called DMT or dimethyltryptamine. And dimethyltryptamine is released in our bodies at 3 events. One is orgasm, which is why they call it la petite mort. After an orgasm, it doesn't really matter. The bills kind of disappear for a while. There's this total sense of release. And also there's this sense of unification, of the lover, of the other. You are unified. So dimethyltryptamine is released in orgasm, it's released in labor, that unification, that ecstatic experience. Then dimethyltryptamine is also released at death, which is the final ecstatic journey, right? If we were taught well, as we were children, we would come to understand the sanctity and the whole unifying process that is held within death.
As women birth the way they live, I believe that people often die the way they lived. If a person is an extrovert, they typically want people around them. If they're more private and introverted, then they typically want to either be alone or have a very, very limited amount of witnesses.
And shamanic plants, other words, are hallucinogenic or psychedelic. And because those words are so loaded in today's culture, now what they're called is entheogens. And they're called entheogens because it's the God within. Theos is God and theogen. Because these plants, when they're taken as the sacraments that Gaia and cultures that know how to work with these plants understand them, then what happens is that sacrament is a unification for us and Creator.
Every hollow or every village had their own midwife because they were the story keepers, often about birth. Also, traditionally, midwives were not only the gatekeepers of birth, but they also traditionally helped people at their dying time as well. So that's a real traditional continuum.
What Native peoples do by taking these sacraments, they're experiencing death. They're flooding their bodies with DMT, and they're journeying, and part of the medicine is you are seeing your fears, because essentially you want to arrive at the final ecstatic journey without any fears.
I had a girlfriend who was very young and had been brought home, and the women of her community were tending her along with her children and her mother as she approached her dying time. She was a single mother of 3 very, very strong young adult children who basically never left her side for days. And because she was young, her dying process took quite a long time. And then her girlfriends and I took shifts just sitting with her and being with her. When it was my turn, the sun was just beginning to come up, and a bird came to the windowsill. And I told my friend that maybe this was her spirit guide. Maybe this little bird was going to help her fly away. And so really soon after that, she stopped breathing. So the women in her community, we gathered around her bed, and we held her hands in a circle, and we wished her on her way. And then we decided to go and get her children and her partner and her mom. And as her children were coming down the staircase, you could hear their feet. She started breathing again. And it had been minutes had passed, because we wanted to really make sure that she was gone before we got everyone. And when she heard her children, she started breathing again. And we woke up her mom and told her mom to come and be with her. And her mom had not been able to let her daughter go. Rightly so. And so her mom finally crawled up in bed with her and said, "It's time to go. I'm going to be okay." And she went. And it was, the room was just vibrating with this yellow glow. It was really quite beautiful. And I just went and opened up the window where the bird had been. Not for any reason except that it felt like the thing to do. And she left.
Sacred is just seeing the beauty and the wonder in everything and in everyone. And that is like the most simple thing to do. It's not complicated. And to me, the sacred in everyday life is waking up each morning in gratitude that A, you made it through the night, and that you are alive, and B, that you are surrounded by beauty in the natural world and in every single person that you meet.
The divine feminine, I believe, is part of God. The divine masculine is a part of God. These energies that we identify with genders has caused a lot of issue for people. So I don't even mean God as male. God just is, to me, is all energy. So if we're all made of the one energy, then that gives me a lot of respect for my human neighbors.
Sometimes the sacred in my heart and in my space is a little fleeting. And as my kids get older and I get busier, I have to go searching sometimes. And I find that all I have to do is walk out the front door.
It's that mystery. And it's keeping that mystery alive that I really feel herbalists and plant people and all of us who are dancing this dream, that's ours to caretake. That is our charge in some way, is to hold that mystery and allow that mystery to be safe, to be sacred. Most people really want to return to that world. We want to go home. Everybody, in all parts of their being, they simply want to return home.
I feel like sacred really equals commitment, and it equals commitment to the magic and commitment to the forces of being who we really are. And listening, not trying to tamp down that inner voice. Magic is feeling the ground vibrate when you walk. It's feeling the air. It's kind of the word that describes all the things that happen that sometimes you can walk through life unfeeling and unseeing. But when you're like really in your heart space, magic is reality. It's what's really going on. It's where all the good stuff happens.
Fire transform me, bring me to my passion. Fire transform me, bring me to my passion.
I'm able to begin to rise, still breathing, still focusing, but now only on the mist. I feel it around me. I feel the moisture. I feel, and I begin to be lifted up, and the mist becomes a cloud. And I am lifted up and up beyond the senses, beyond consciousness, until I believe I am one with the healing majesty of God.
To dance among the flames.
Ritual or action gives form to our feelings. And so when you love a person and you help them when they need the help the most, you are putting your love into action and form.
Once, long ago, a girl wailed and wailed as she watched the buffalo trample her father to death. A magical bird brought her all that was left of him, one tiny bone. As the buffalo watched and listened, she sang a song of earth and air, of fire and water, of sun and moon and stars, until once again her father stood before her, whole and breathing. in awe of the life-giving power of her song, the buffalo gave their sacred song to the girl, that she might sing and replenish their life force always. There is a wildness in the heart of beauty, which is now endangered. Women gather and sing over the bones of the ancestors to restore this world. Sing and melt the weapons. Sing and open hearts. Sing over the bones of a dying paradigm and birth a new way of being that will sustain the wildness of the beauty, which is the soul of this world. To me, Avalon, I will sing, I will call, I will come, Avalon. Cross the years, cross the waves, carry me, Avalon. Hush now from silence, the phoenix is rising. Avalon. Mist rises, flowers dance, drums beating Avalon. Eyes in the dark, you were calling me, Avalon. Cover my heart with your mystery, my Avalon. Cradle me, carry me, and sorcel me, I will rise and go now, for always night and day. I hear lake water lapping in low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement grey. The deep heart's core, I hear it in the deep